Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where we talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie,
I'm Thom.
And I'm Ben.
and today we're going to be talking about the 2014 film Nightcrawler. This will contain spoilers.
Yeah, that's entertaining. Okay, so we just watched Nightcrawler, and I'm gonna do the plot summary, even though I've got a cold because Ben and Ollie are terrible people. So it's about this guy Lou Bloom, who decides to become a freelance journalist, and he works at night and will just try and find crimes that are happening and sell it to a local news station. And it's kind of like as he improves through it, but also becomes more and more morally dodgy until kind of like the climax at the end, where now there are spoilers, so go watch it, which, you know, it leads in his partner dying and him just like filming as he dies, and then the police kind of investigate him to see if he withheld evidence, which he did, and it's suggested he just gets away with it because it finishes with him with now 2 vans and giving a speech to some new interns.
Yeah.
It's very. I think we all really enjoyed it. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those films where you could go away, like, you didn't have to think about it too much. You just went away knowing that it was good.
I did think about it though.
I mean, well,
I'm
I
gonna
don't.
say it's.
I don't mean like you
it's
didn't
what-
think about
yeah,
it, but like it wasn't like a particularly like it wasn't like at the level of I'm thinking of ending things or anything. It just made you question a
Yeah.
little bit about the protagonist's morality and a lot of the themes that were brought up because of that.
Yeah.
Um,
But I just thought the whole concept in general was just really interesting because it's like an untold story that you never really think about, but with a unique take on it.
yeah.
It was like really gripping. The thriller kind of genre came through. It's not really entirely a thriller, but I was definitely never bored. Like, this is one of the films I've been the most engrossed in. It was really good. Just couldn't look away, which is kind of the feeling I think it's supposed to get because, you know, the theme of showing extreme violence on the news, the whole draw of that is that people also just can't really look away from that. So there's a lot of things there, and I think there's quite a lot to take away from it, as well as it just being a really exciting film, because it has a really hard critique of the media, like the news corporations and how they operate, and kind of deals with important issues in a way which is quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's able to do that in an entertaining style, as you say, without having to think too much about it, but then there is something to analyze to an extent. I think for me, I definitely it it wasn't boring. Obviously, it was always really entertaining. The only part where I felt it dragged slightly was maybe like the middle with the montages, and I think that it got slightly repetitive just in comparison to just because of the final um like the final recording he does in well, not the final scene, but like the when Rick dies, that was just so engrossing, and I just couldn't look away.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
the same even before that with when he gets to the robbery before the police arrive there. That's such a tense scene as well.
Yeah,
and he
I
kind of
just mean like
he watches one of them die, and then says that no, they were all dead when he got there.
yeah, I really enjoyed all of that. I just with like the car crashes and stuff, it just got slightly repetitive.
Yeah.
I felt.
Yeah, there
Oh,
were.
I actually quite liked the montage. I don't know why. I think I really just enjoyed seeing the two characters because I guess it can move on to like Jake Gyllenhaal in this is really good. He does really well at kind of playing this at first charming sociopath who will just do anything to try and succeed. He tries to work his way to the top and has a weird thing of saying that like anyone at the top was never just dropped there. They have to work their way up, which you could argue about, but it kind of just that whole thing makes him really ruthless and will do anything, including it seems like murdering his partner for a good shot.
Yeah, because that in that scene, he basically tells his partner to go and get a good shot, but he can clearly see from where he is that the shooter is there, and the shooter ends up killing his partner, and is the I keep saying his partner. I've forgotten his name. Rick. That was it.
Rick.
Yeah, as Rick's
Yeah.
dying, he's just like getting his camera out and getting a good shot, and uh, the whole film deals with like the lack of morality in, I suppose, the news media, but like as it's sort of amplified into like any kind of corruption is just sort of centered into his one character, and it's that's not to say that everyone else isn't corrupt, but he's sort of like a caricature. But I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that he's like the personification of everything that's sort of wrong with the corruption in news media.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
because
one of
as
the
it
interesting themes that I liked was kind of the news director talking about that the stories they need is urban crime seeping into suburbia, preferably like committed by poor people and minorities.
Yeah,
So it can kind of show that these typically older because it was 2014, so people were still they were now mainly getting their news off the internet, so mainly older audience, and it can kind of it's irresponsible in a way because it's can fuel even if it may be implicit bias, but it still kind of fuels those racist ideas and kind of puts the blame on the news. So like a particular thing is when the home invasion, it turns out that the family were or the house was storing like loads and loads of drugs. They didn't want to report on that because that takes away from the fact that these poor, innocent, rich family was murdered by a couple of Latino men.
yeah,
yeah,
and there are a
and
couple of times.
something.
Go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, going back to Lou, what I really found interesting about his character arc was that he progressively becomes more cynical and like self-centered and willing to sacrifice everything to get the best story or the best footage. But at the same time, there's always like I think the final line in the film is something like, "I would never tell you to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself." And there is
Yeah,
always that feeling that he would all like he so Rick is killed, but at the same time, you'd think that Lou would also be willing to do that because he gets so dedicated and he's just so like diligent, but in a weird way.
Yeah, the only reason I think he like made Rick do that was because Rick was available, I guess, and he was trying to get a shot. If he didn't have a partner, I wouldn't. He would have definitely done that, I think. And
Yeah, and he's also like able to exploit people who are vulnerable to an extent because they don't have a job. And you see at the start, he almost embraces that because he is like he steals the watch right at the start of the film, and that's always with him the rest of the film. It's like a reminder of his own past, and he's sort of using that to his advantage to grant internships and lower wages.
Yeah, I
It's
think I think he as a character is a very interesting study into, I guess, sociopathy because, um, well, the interesting way he was able to go from basically no one to putting on this air, this persona of someone who's incredibly professional. And I think a great scene that exemplifies this is when he was recruiting Rick. When like only like 5-10 minutes before, he was pretty much, well, he wasn't homeless, but he didn't have a job, and he wasn't successful. He was living in his apartment, like a small apartment. But then when he's recruiting Rick, he's able to put on this air of some big news presenter. Sorry, like the head of this video company, and he's obviously making Rick think that like what he's walking into is a much bigger opportunity than just like one freelancer who's hiring an assistant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
you
the way
start to see
he's
that
yeah,
he's able to capitalize on what he's learned from being in this industry, because one of the most memorable scenes in my opinion was when he like confronts the person working at the news, saying like demanding that he has choice over the money he gets and he has his own company, and it's like referencing him on the news, so he's able to gain control even though at the start he's in like quite a vulnerable position.
yeah, and he's sort of manipulating the chief editor, called Nina, throughout the whole film. Because at the start, it seems very much that she's in control because he's a simple freelancer who's just trying to give his footage to whoever's going to pay him. And she's just like, no, you're not getting 1,000 for this. I'm giving you 250 max. But then throughout the film, you sort of see that he's worming his way into like getting control over her. And like obviously this sort of reaches a climax with that scene you mentioned where he sort of explodes and is like, no, this is going to make or break your station. You need to give me this amount of money. I get control over how much I want. I get credited on the news. I want to be introduced to all of your superiors so I can make my own connections. And she ultimately agrees, and this is mainly just because like he is undoubtedly getting like incredibly good footage, and their ratings are sort of sliding a bit. And so he also says himself that he's like single-handedly raised the price of footage because he's getting such good shots. And then there's also this weird scene where he sort of tries to get her on a date. But what he's really kind of doing is he's looking for, well, he basically wants a physical relationship. And in return for that, he's not going to leave them and keep providing them with footage. So he's sort of like, he's like sexually manipulating her, and that's like a thing that often happens on in the television industry. So it's a very good critique, I think, of a lot of the corruption that goes on behind the screen.
Yeah,
But
and I just want to say that like Louis is so good as like a terrifying presence that he always becomes a boogeyman. Like the ominous moment where he's kind of filming the guy of the rival freelance journalist, like Mayhem something, and he's just kind of filming him as he's bleeding out and being brought onto an ambulance, and this guy just stares up at him. It's just that really ominous overtones, and also moments where, like, because there's the scene where he kind of freaks out and smashes the mirror, and it kind of shows his potential, and it's like the weird subtle ways he threatens people, like threatening Rick with, you have no idea if he, like, just talking about beating him up or killing him, when he says, if you don't do what I ask, I may have to resort to like physical means or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But he's able to be. He's always has that frightening presence, but at the same time, he's, as we've been saying, he's such a complex character. This character development is probably one of my favorite that I've seen recently, and I think he's definitely deserving of like Oscar nominations for his performance.
Mm.
Which he didn't get.
Yeah, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess, yeah, the characters are very interesting. But also, I guess to a lesser degree, because it's not the most technically outstanding film. There have been lots of other comparable films I could think would have more, would have better cinematography and well, not better cinematography, but more noticeably better cinematography. But this film was sort of more subtle in the way it used camera work. But there was there's one interesting scene that a couple of people on Reddit picked up on, where he's describing what a good shot is to Rick. He's saying something like, it doesn't just bring the viewer into the scene, it blurs the line between being in the scene and being out of the scene. And whilst he's describing this, the shot of him on the film that you're watching is a perfect example of this. And there are a lot of similar things throughout the movie. So this idea that it blurs the line between the subject on screen and the viewer who's watching it, I think that was very effective, and the filmmakers definitely were trying to do that consciously.
Yeah, because the reason he's able to become so successful is like he doesn't really have that moral understanding of what would be deemed acceptable. He's trying to, in a strange way, present an intimate moment of like someone's last moments or really distraught, and it's meant to, like, the audience are meant to really feel like they're in the moment. And also, well, you could maybe say that a lot of what he captures is like overly cinematic to an extent, but it I see the sort of like, you have to look at the cinematography of both the film, but then also him, because in a way it's like he's also making well, not a film, but he's also filming stuff.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff towards the beginning of the film where he was trying to go into crime scenes and get really good shots, but the police had to keep like pushing him back because he'd be getting in the way of stuff. And I don't think he was being malicious there. I think he just simply did not understand that it wasn't acceptable for him to be shoving a camera right into a victim's face. And then when he gets a little bit more of an understanding and sort of keeps his distance, but he still tries to get those same shots. And when he ends up selling them to the station, there's like, obviously Nina, the chief editor, is quite corrupt, but there's this other editor who's throughout the film sort of like what you'd expect. You'd be like, so he's like the moral compass, basically. He's saying like, no, that's wrong, like it's legal, but is that ethically right for you to be doing? Are you allowed to be showing this? Especially in like the house robbery, the house shooting. They do end up airing the footage of the people who'd been shot. They blurred out the faces, but he was saying before they made that decision that they should be contacting the victims' families first, and they should be checking that it's all right with them, rather than just going ahead and showing this without any regard for the consequences it might have.
Yeah, because one of the most controversial things about that scene is that he got there before the police and didn't report it. And I know that something that stood out to me quite a lot was when you see the behind the scenes of the news broadcast, Nina's in the ear constantly reiterating like, "Oh, make sure you emphasize that um this was like unprovoked. This was everyone could experience the same thing. Everyone's in a precarious position in terms of crime in the area." And then that's the appeal. She realizes a target audience and she's sort of able to exploit that fear that viewers have.
Yeah. Hmm.
There's some interesting things other than like criticizing the media. I think it kind of, you could say that it criticizes like consumer culture as a whole, or even maybe even all of capitalism. Damn, because it kind of talks about like, obviously there's people consuming, these images of people's final moments, and that people, they will probably pay more for kind of more visceral and detailed images, or whatever. But also it kind of shows the power that someone with a lot of money can have. So as Lou gets more money, he basically, use it to almost extort. Or I don't know how to explain it, but it's his power over Rick is from his money, because Rick is kind of, he's homeless and he just needs anything. He just needs any job, and that's why he can have Rick's job being like directing him to places while he's driving 100 miles per hour down a tiny road, and Rick's not gonna complain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's kind of has that theme of money equaling to power. So it's the same at the start, how Lou isn't very doesn't have much power with negotiate with people or anything, because he's just starting out, and even at the start show that he can't be hired because he's a criminal, because he's not got any money. And then the more money he gets, the more power he has over people. Eventually being able to try and force a relationship with the news director, and uh, having Rick like just do the trick of saying that Rick can set his own salary, because he knows that Rick will aim low. It's
yeah,
just kind of that kind of stuff, because it's got the theme. If Rick does something that will upset Lou, then he could lose all of his income and go back out on the street. So I think that
that
was quite an interesting theme.
yeah. The idea of like authority because of money is something that you definitely see at the end as well, because um like you see these new recruits are all eager and naive to an extent, and you can see that he's able, because he's got this aura of being successful, and they want to replicate that, then they'll sort of believe whatever he says, and he's able to project that corruptness that he has.
Yeah.
There's she talk about the soundtrack, because the soundtrack I really liked it. The kind of, it has like soaring ambient guitars at points. There was one moment where I think it was an intense scene, and it had like the Breaking Bad vibe of the um, kind of percussion, the like, speedy percussion and stuff. So that was cool. And it said that the kind of triumphant orchestral noises were used with Lou when he was like when he's moving a dead body to get a better shot and things like that. They use a more triumphant tone because it's supposed to be what Lou might be hearing in his head, the music, which is, so it's like a sign of his potential for his success while he's doing these vile things to get just a good shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that regard, the music's very telling of his own like being a sociopath and not caring about others and just favouring the shots over like morality.
Yeah.
Mhm. There's definitely a lot more to
You-
talk about, but I'm struggling to think of things.
Yeah.
There's so many. I'm trying to like. Did I say that I actually like the montage? Yeah, I did. Oh no.
Oh no.
I mean, I
Oh
didn't
no.
hate the montage, but I just felt that it was a lot of sort of lower scale, uh, innocuous to an extent, the tasks. Well, not tasks, but like events that he was capturing at the start, and I just felt it got a little bit repetitive when he turned up and there'd be the rival person there, and they'd be like, "Oh, I got the footage first." But I
Yeah.
understand that that's necessary to understand his progression and understand why he's able to get to the point where he's in control and he's the one that's dictating his salary.
Yeah.
I just remembered the opening of kind of like it was just a few minutes of really wide shots of Los Angeles, and the soundtrack for that fit really well too,
Yeah.
which established the mood well, and also kind of the colors that's used. It has a quite a similar color palette. It's like saturated colors. It's a bit like Drive. I've seen people comparing it to. Um, it's it's a really cool look. I think it's quite a unique looking film with just the color scheme and the way everything's shot, which I
Yeah.
usually I did really like the way it looked. That was part of the way it drew you in, and the editing usually fit that. There was just one point where I think it was might have been during that last kind of the last 20 minutes during like the car chase, where I think it like cut to a shot while Lou was still on the street filming. It cut to like a side shot of the criminals getting in a car, and I just thought it was weird to not just fully use the camera footage that they were getting, because that seemed more consistent. So
Yeah.
that's like only one of the
Yeah.
few criticisms I've got of it, is maybe it could have been a bit more consistent.
Yeah. I mean, we've mentioned Gyllenhaal's performance, but just looking at some of the trivia, he was obviously very dedicated to the role. Like, apparently, he lost 20 pounds to visualize Lou's uh, present him as like a hungry coyote,
Yeah.
and apparently also he memorized the entire movie to make it more like a play. And also, I know we mentioned the scene where like the rival footage is playing on the news, and like he smashes the mirror. Apparently, that was an improvised scene, and he actually cut his hand.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
why.
definitely,
Yeah, that's why in the scene with him in the junkyard where he's trying to pitch himself for a job offer, he has his left hand behind his back the whole time.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was in a cast. What a guy.
So
You
it's
should have
definitely
smashed that mirror.
authentic.
Mm.
What else?
We could talk about the actor Rick. I've seen him before, and I
Oh
need
yeah,
to
same.
I need to
Let's look
know.
him
Was
up.
he in The Social Network, or have I made that up?
He's in Venom.
Oh, that's where I've
Might
seen
be.
him before.
Is he in the Social
Yeah.
Network? I feel.
I may have made that
He's
up.
a
No, it seems
antagonist in
familiar.
Venom.
Yeah, he's the antagonist in Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is he? Rick.
Definitely different roles. But I
Wait,
think
no,
he was
that's
good in this.
the news
Riz
anchor.
Ahmed.
Wait. The news anchors were played by. Were they played by themselves? Oh, weird.
Very professional. Googling on the job.
Here he is. Yeah. I know. He's in Rogue One as well, and Four Lions,
Oh,
which I've not seen.
who did he play in Rogue One?
Can't remember.
I don't know.
Bodhi
No.
Rook. I don't know who that is.
No.
A bit of a
Yeah.
different role from him being in Venom. In this, he did really well at being kind of the nervous, bumbling, anxious, like everyman that I think does well as the thing that the audience can project themselves onto. So you're kind of viewing everything from Rick's position where, I mean, you are a bit shocked of Lou going, speeding around the streets at first, but then you kind of think it's cool and you just get used to it. So he's kind of the role of the audience, I think.
Yeah.
Because obviously we don't really get a say in anything that's happening either. And when he's going in to film the robbery and it's still going on and there's gunshots and everything, we're also like, what are you doing? Even though we can see it, we're still like, what's going on?
Yeah. But he does stuff in that scene, like moving the pictures on the fridge and stuff to try and
Oh, that's the
manipulate
other
the
one.
situation a bit.
That's the other home invasion.
Oh,
Yeah, but he does do that,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
they keep wanting him. I've just realized they keep wanting him to get interviews with people at the crime scenes, but he never does, and that might be a kind of way to show his sociopathy, and he doesn't feel like hearing people's sides kind of matters, rather than showing these disturbing images. That's what's going to draw people in. So, like the few
Yeah.
times he does try to interview someone,
He's
they're
like really aggressive.
distressed and like just don't want to be talked to, which completely makes sense.
Yeah, they're all very
Yeah.
distressed, and he's just coming across as quite aggressive. And one of them was calling 911, and so the
Yeah.
fact that he just couldn't pick up on those like social cues that like you shouldn't like be that aggressive if you want a decent interview.
Yeah. I mean, there's a line where he says something like, his problem isn't that he doesn't understand people, but he just doesn't like them.
Yeah.
So he's fully embracing the fact that he's cynical and he's basically capturing these scenes at the expense of others.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a sociopath. Just found out that the news director, she was Frigga in Thor. A little fun fact for you.
Frigga.
So
Right.
we talked about the soundtrack and we didn't say who it was. It was James Newton Howard. There you go. He's done
Nice.
many other things that you can find.
He was in
Such as-
Dante's Peak. That was a great film.
He did the music and also of like Hunger Games and loads of stuff.
And Dante's Peak.
Loads and loads and loads of stuff. And Dante's Peak, yes.
And
Ben's
Dante's
favourite
Peak.
film.
Such
Ben,
a
why
great
do you
film.
love Dante's Peak so much? What's your favourite part of Dante's Peak?
When the volcano explodes.
Is that the whole film?
Yeah.
No, I feel like the dog dies.
Oh wait, no. There was.
Oh,
Do you remember that
spoilers.
scene when there was like two teenagers going to get a bit cheeky and like
Was that Dante's Peak or was that the flood one?
No, that was Dante's Peak because it was like
yeah, because it gets hot and they're like, oh,
I can't
bubble
remember
bath or
the
something.
term from geography, but like it gets hot and they die.
Yeah, I remember that now. A similar one does happen in the flood bit, I think. Same, it's all disaster movies. Anyway, the Nightcrawler.
Is this another
They had
detour?
They had some interesting marketing things for Nightcrawler. So, as well as the trailers, they also released on like Craigslist a video resume of Lou, and they set up Twitter and LinkedIn profiles for him, and it was supposed to show how professional he was. And he just promoted video production news. I mean, what a great company name. It's
I was
so
about to
generic.
say that. It felt like
Yeah,
at first
wonder
I
if
thought he was like just like making it up on the spot and was just like,
Yeah.
and you're gonna cite me as Lou from Video Production News. But he actually rolled with it. I'm like, I found that kind of funny.
I think
I'm
it
kinda
could be
surprised,
showing the fake nature of corporations or just the almost lazy way they do things. Just video production news.
I mean, I thought it was
not
more like
not lazy, just devoid of interesting ideas.
I mean, I thought it
Yeah.
was more like he was so confident in his abilities to like manipulate people to like give him a chance that he felt he didn't like need a professional name, that like he himself, his own personality and his own character would be enough, which it did seem to be,
Yeah.
because like
It's
One
kind of
thing-
surprising though, because pretty much a lot of his dialogue and stuff is just quoted from things he's learned from the internet or
Yeah.
courses
yeah,
he's done.
was.
So
It sounded like he was reading like some motivational quotes off the internet.
yeah,
And
so you'd think
Surprised
you'd
it
have thought
worked
if
on
he'd done
any of
like
them.
business courses, then
yeah,
he'd come up with
he
a
has
cool
like a
name.
weird hierarchy of what people name him. Although maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But when he goes to the news network, he lets them call him Lou. But when he's looking at hiring Rick calls him Lou, and then he corrects him and says Lewis.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I wonder if
yeah.
it's kind of like a signaling who's inferior to
Yeah.
him and who has more power.
Almost like you don't deserve to call me that name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to use a whole 2 syllables instead of 1.
Oh no. Except they spelt Lewis with like Louis. I don't understand.
No,
why
that is how it's sometimes pronounced Lewis. I'm
yeah, I
sorry
know.
to
It's just
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Shout out
Lewis.
Lewis, by the way.
Shout
Shout
out
out to
Louis
Lewis.
Gawthorne. Louis G.
I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about this film so much because I really enjoyed it, but I just can't think of anything. So
Yeah,
we've been
so-
going
What
for
was the
half an
budget
hour.
like?
So we
Well, I think
the
it's-
budget. I think it was 8 million. So fairly.
How did it
small.
perform?
Yeah, I mean,
It
there
got
wasn't any,
50 million at Toronto Film Festival where it debuted.
there wasn't really
Nice.
anything noticeable that would be too expensive, but
Jake Gyllenhaal probably.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that was sort of the anchor of the film, his character, and that was what really heightened a lot of the tension and a lot of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
emotional responses and like catharsis.
I mean, I went
it's
into
but-
it because it said it was a thriller film, and I was expecting something more like, because obviously there were very tense moments and stuff, but generally I would have associated thriller films with more like, I don't know, robberies and drug deals and stuff, but from the perspective of the people doing it. This is sort of a different take on that, given it's the news media that's like the first to see what's going on, and they kind of control the narrative for the general populace. So I thought that was interesting. There are obviously tense moments and stuff, so I'd say thriller's definitely apt, but it's a unique take on the genre and doesn't really fall into any of the tropes, which I thought was one of its strengths, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Its budget was 8.5 million, and its worldwide gross was about 47 million. So
Nice.
so you know, so that's a fairly small budget and not a massive gross, but I think it did quite well after cinema releases as well. I believe because it's fairly popular on like IMDb. It's got quite a few reviews. So
got almost half a
I think it
million,
had a
so
kind
it's-
of, an upkick at some point of viewership. I mean, it helps that it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
For it to get more viewership.
Yeah. Cool. So, let's wrap it up then and see what we think.
We shall.
We shall.
Well, I mean, I know what I think, but
So do I. Otherwise, I wouldn't
yeah,
be
so
coming on the
everyone else can
podcast.
find out
Work
what they
out.
think.
Yeah.
So I absolutely hated this film.
Oh no!
Oh no.
I've just been deceiving you the whole time.
No way!
Hmm. Oh, so I just boosted up the website to check the every rating in order page, which you can see if you go onto our website, which is entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com. But
Yes.
I've been quite busy the last week or so and have not updated it with the last 2 episodes. Oh no.
Oh.
But I
Yeah,
remember I'm thinking of ending things with 7.9, and I think, what was episode 22? That was the two popes. Yeah.
Both, yeah, 23.
That was a bit
Low
lower. That was sort of,
sevens?
there was like 7.3 or something. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
because it was on par with Hollywood.
Yeah.
Cool. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I
Well-
think it was very enjoyable. Good cinematography, good plot, good themes. Ooh.
Ooh.
So enjoyable and has a bit more to draw from. And it's definitely worth watching. You won't get bored. Great performances. All of that. All of that. I'm gonna give it a 7.7.
Nice.
Nice. For me, the last, well, starting from like the second home robbery, all of that up to the end of the film was just so gripping and palpable that, and some of the acting in this was some of the best I've seen recently. So I had a couple of minor criticisms that we've talked about, but on the whole, I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna give it an 8.
Ooh. Well, I'm going to go same as Thom, 7.7, because we've got the interview down as 7.6, and I think I enjoyed that just slightly more than this. But upon looking at the page, I gave that a 7.8, so I think 7.7 is about right for me, because it was good. It had some great themes, some really, really good acting. It's just, the reason it's like not low is not anything wrong with the film. It's just that I think some of the films are better than it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that gives it a 7.8 in total.
Wow.
So making it the third film rated 7.8.
Ooh.
Are
Damn.
there's recommendations? There is, because I've got one.
How
There
about
is, but first,
Submission Spotlight?
you always go on to the ratings, bro. We have to repeat the same script of submission spotlight every week until someone actually submits. So if you are a creator of some kind of entertainment and you would like it featured on the podcast, then please send us. You can email us, you can DM us on Twitter or Instagram. You can even just leave a comment. I don't know. There are lots of ways to get in contact with us. We're active on pretty much everywhere apart from the website the last 2 weeks. I'm sorry about that. We do have something we'll be doing next week, but after that we are completely free. So whatever you want, we're happy to dedicate a segment to it and give some constructive criticism, but also build your self-esteem up, because we don't want to put you off. So there's that. Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about what's going to happen next week as well. But first, we have recommendations.
Yo, okay. So I thought I'd recommend a Jake Gyllenhaal film to be, now we've got a theme. And it is actually, wait, I'm slightly worried I've put it as one of my favorites on the website. Oh well, if it is on there. So I'm recommending Donnie Darko. It's not on there. Okay. Whew.
No.
I don't think it should go on there, but it is an amazing film. Just don't know if it's in the top 5, So Donnie Darko stars Jake Gyllenhaal, but 9 years younger, and he's like a teenager who starts seeing like some guy in a buddy suit called Frank, who tells him that the world's gonna end in. Oh, sorry, it's been a while since I've seen it. In a certain amount of time, and then Donnie Darko kind of develops these like weird supernatural things happen. It's a really weird film, and you'll want to watch it twice. Like I watched it the first time, and then I was like, I need to watch it again. So I watched it again like the next day, because it's quite weird. But if you watch it twice, you may have to then look stuff up about it, but you can kind of piece together what happened, and it's just a really gripping story, and it has a kind of satire element. Oh, sorry, it came out in 2001, so 13 years younger, Jake Gyllenhaal. But it always has a satire of how youth in current society are viewed. And Donnie Darko himself is like a really interesting character, and it talks about like the morality of, sacrifice for the greater good, and it's really interesting. You should watch it. It's quite weird. I don't know. Apparently, it's listed as sci-fi fantasy. I guess that's what it is. But it's not like, I don't know. Just watch it. It's good.
Groovy.
It's sometimes on
Nice.
Netflix.
Sometimes.
I've got it on DVD because I'm cool.
They add
Oh.
it to Netflix once a week and then just remove it.
Before we go
It
on to
feels like
whoever
that.
does it next, speaking of Netflix, I'd like to interrupt with a quick announcement. Kangaroo Jack will be on Netflix
Oh, yeah.
from the beginning of October. So if you want to watch a amazing,
No,
great,
no.
fun film for the whole family, then watch Kangaroo Jack. Then go back and watch our
Don't.
episode on it.
I wish Kangaroo Jack Good Day USA had been on Netflix before I spent £3 on it.
Yeah. Is that what you're recommending? Worth every
You've
penny.
got a recommendation, Ben.
Okay, so I kind of have two, and
Ooh.
both of them are, right.
That's
Both
not
of them are
loud.
music, and I'm currently reading a novel, which I'll probably have finished by next week. So
Is one of them Nectar?
it might be, possibly. Yes, it is. So it is a
Whoa.
groovy album from singer, songwriter, producer Joji, who was formerly known as Filthy Frank on YouTube, but has since built up a huge music career. This is his second album. It's very cinematic in some songs, but very laid back in others. Seems to have a very cohesive sound, which is quite different to his last album, Ballads 1. It's so the opening track I absolutely love, and it's produced by Bacon and the Donuts, which are a great name for a production team. It's basically this like cinematic orchestral ballad, but it also has hard-hitting hip-hop drums, and that's sort of a theme that goes through the whole album. So you've either got a really cinematic sound with strings, or a more laid-back sound with an acoustic guitar or jazz piano, and sort of like more popular hip-hop or trap-style drums throughout the whole album. And then the big song that I think everyone's going to be talking about, and it's going to be a big hit because it's doing really well on the charts on like Spotify at the moment, is Like You Do, which is essentially just a really stripped back piano ballad with some synth sound design in there, with some great lyrics and very heartfelt. If you want a good cry, then you can go and listen to that. If you want to cry your hearts out, then listen to Nectar by Joji. And I mentioned Bacon and the Donuts for a reason, because they're like, I'm obsessed with their production style. Like at the moment, they sort of mix old and new sounds together with these sort of like cinematic orchestral rock, but it's also with some psychedelic rock in there, and obviously with like hip hop beats that are more prevalent at the moment, and sort of all that mixes together. And there's the guy Bacon, which is spelt Bekon, has an album that he released in 2018 quite quietly on his own, like independently, called Get With The Times, and that's basically sort of the stuff he's doing for other artists, but on his own, with his own songwriting and his own performance. It's a great listen. It also has a great song on there called Mama Olivia, which has a great saxophone solo. It's quite jazz inspired. So yeah, that's a great. It sort of like calls on like a lot of 70s rock, but like anything from like psychedelic to progressive and symphonic rock. That's a big one, but with like hip hop beats and songwriting very reminiscent of like Elton John or Billy Joel or someone. So yeah, that's groovy. Go and listen to Nectar by Joji, which is a really big album at the moment, and Get With The Times by Bacon, which is a really quiet album and kind of flopped in 2018 because he released it independently. Great song on there. I'll just say this last bit. Great song in there is called America, which is just like layered vocal harmonies, and that's actually sort of like an extended version of a track that appeared on Kendrick Lamar's Damn, which he produced. So there are a lot of like Kendrick Lamar fans that like want an extended version of the intro of that song. Basically, that's just what happens on his album. So that is groovy.
Nice. Well, I don't really have much to say about my. Well, it's not really a recommendation because, to be honest, I didn't really like it. But
What? Is it Kangaroo Jack? Good Day USA.
So I don't know if this is a bit of a spoiler, but we have a pre-recorded episode which we don't know when it'll be coming out. But we watched The Irishman, and on that episode, I said that I hadn't watched any other Scorsese films. Well, it turned out I had watched Hugo, but
yeah.
So I watched Mean Streets.
Oh, you shouldn't have started with Mean Streets. Oh
No. It was just a bit slow and dull, and
yeah, I agree.
I didn't really
thought it was...
like any of the characters, or I didn't really like the story. But there were certain elements that were good, but on the whole,
yeah, I think it had its moments, but overall it felt a bit slow and like nowhere near the dynamic intensity of like Goodfellas or something. So
yeah,
definitely
I
try
only
and watch
watched it.
some more of his stuff, like Goodfellas and Shutter Island. You'll definitely like those two.
I only watched it because it's like getting removed from Netflix at the end of the month, so
Yeah.
I might as well. But I guess watch it and form your own opinion if you want. But I wasn't a massive fan.
Fair enough.
So that's my recommendation.
Your recommendation in quotation marks. Cool. Right. Well, we've still got a bit of time left, and I think we're starting to do this thing where we're going to be telling you what we'll be doing the next week, so you can watch it in advance, because that's what just common sense, and somehow we didn't think of it for like 22 episodes. The last couple of weeks have been weird because we recorded 2 episodes in the wrong order but flipped them because I'm thinking of ending things was a bit more relevant at the moment, so we wanted to capitalize on the hype. And then we had a pre-recorded episode, as Ollie mentioned, The Irishman. This is the first live we've done in quite a while. But we can't tell you what film we'll be doing next week, because next week is our 25th episode, which is quite a milestone, given, according to Buzzsprout, most podcasts sort of tail off after 7 episodes. We tailed off after 4, and then came back 2 years later. But we're still going. So I don't know, I'm quite happy about that. And to celebrate, we're going to be doing a special episode where we're going to be going back through those 4 episodes we did, and revisiting those films and like updating our ratings, because quite frankly we were too generous, I think. And that's not a bad thing, because they were, to be fair, the first 4 episodes we did. It would just be cool to go back and look with a bit more hindsight, and having watched a lot of other films and done more podcasts.
Yeah.
And we'll also be doing a Q&A segment. So I'm going to be spamming all social medias with ask us questions now. Be putting on the mailing list as well. So if you have any questions whatsoever, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Could be about the films we're doing, could be about the podcast itself.
Could be about us.
Yeah, us personally. I don't know, if you're like starting a podcast and want any advice, we're probably not the greatest people to be giving said advice.
We'll tell you anyway.
But we've done 25 episodes, and that's more than 7, so...
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we'll just be, instead of doing a film, we'll fill the first 40 minutes with looking back through the stuff we've done and Q&As. Just anything you'd like to know, we'll answer them. As long as they're appropriate. And as always, the submission spotlight is open, so not for next week because we've got something, but for like any episode after that, we're more than happy to do that. And we're happy to have you on the podcast to talk about your own work, rather than us just like giving our opinions. We thought it might be a bit more fun to like actually speak with you who created it. That doesn't have to be live necessarily if you're not free at 4 p.m. British time on a Sunday. We're happy to pre-record if whenever is more suitable for you. But it'd be cool to like actually speak with some people. That would be cool. That would be cool. I've said that quite a few times.
It would be cool.
Would it be cool?
Yes, it would be cool.
Well, that's cool. That would be cool.
So, before Ben gets stuck in an endless loop, I think we should end the episode.
Yeah. So follow us on social media at ERV Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Go to our website, entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com, and sign up for our free newsletter. You'll receive a couple of cool things, including the schedule for the next few episodes and master doc with all of the recommendations we've ever done, the links to buy them or stream them. And again, if you have any questions, please let us know and we'll be happy to answer them next episode. So, thanks for listening. Alright, see you.
Alright, see you.
Alright, see you.